Welcome to ITTV.
Click.
Margaret was a party girl from back in the day. She used to really get around. She was hanging with the Rolling Stones, but then she met the Cuban crowd. Everybody knows that Justin Trudeau's really Fidel Castro's son. Pierre didn't mind that his wife spent some time with the dictator of fun. You can see it in his eyes, you can see it all over his face. You can feel how he needs that control, just like Fidel ran his place. Some say that the cycles repeat, the acorn doesn't fall far from the tree. That's why it's starting to seem like Sox is a little junior commie. Everybody knows that Justin Trudeau's really Fidel Castro's son. Pierre didn't mind that his wife spent some time with the dictator of fun. Everybody knows that Justin Trudeau's really Fidel Castro's son. Pierre didn't mind that his wife spent some time with the dictator of fun. Margaret brought him to meet Fidel, put him right in his hands. You could see the sparkle in his eye, just like a real proud dad. I think someone better talk to a nurse. Maybe it's some baby switching plan. The only thing that I really know for sure is that Pierre is too ugly of a man. That's why everybody knows that Justin Trudeau's really Fidel Castro's son. Pierre didn't mind that his wife spent some time with the dictator of fun. Everybody knows that Justin Trudeau's really Fidel Castro's son. 'Cause Pierre didn't mind that his wife spent some time with the dictator of fun.
Click.
Hello friends, welcome to our YouTube channel, accidentally named Irrational Times. He's got a microphone and his very own YouTube show. It's the Daily Boogie. It's the Daily Boogie.
Those were the days.
Might feel the same way that you do. Might feel the same way.
She was hanging with the Rolling Stones, but then she met the Cuban crowd. Are you ready for this? For the losers who always get pissed. Don't fuck around or you're gonna get pressed by Johnny Boston. Only go one way on the muddy plane. We're only going one way when you're riding on the muddy plane.
The way she's acting, and I'm kinda scared. She's gonna shave your head, then marry your hair.
They had a lot of money and plane tickets to get away. But Officer Scott DiCarlo stopped them. They were detained.
What do you expect when they call you Talcum X? politics and you're just cashing in on the news.
Wow. It appears we really are living in irrational times.
Super cool fun trip.
How's she going, boys?
And now, because you can't get enough of that sweet, sweet stuff, it's the Irrational Times live stream with your host, Irrational Times, and the lovely assistant.
Hey, good morning. Indeed, not exactly the lovely assistant yet. She'll be here. She's still asleep. She's the only one. She's the only one sleeping of all you ladies. So I've noticed that early in the morning, it's only the ladies up. So, hello, good day to you all, and a very special day, because today, of course, I don't know how much you're gonna like this. Maybe you'll hate it, and I will too. But we're gonna watch Justin Trudeau be questioned all day. Oh, we're going to have a time. So, just a quick, recap. Last year, big protest, trucks, Canadian flags, ooh, Nazi flag. Horrible, horrible danger for the whole country. I'm joking, of course. But, and now back then they did the Emergency Measures Act where they brought in horses and extra policemen and acted all rowdy on the protesters who were being cool. And now they're being questioned to see if that was called for. And so there's lawyers that are going up one after the other and questioning. Good morning, Amy, reinforcing the stereotype that only girls get up early in the morning. Congratulations, ladies. You're getting the worm. Is that what you call it? Hobo's up, too. There you go. Another lady. What's up, Hobo? Hobo, get out of here. It's just me and the girls right now. No, but, of course, let's check in now. It's about to start. Let's see. Of course, yes, Carrie, I do follow Mr. Sunshine, baby. I have to say, I love that he clips out the parts of, the political, either it's the Parliament House, the Parliament, or the Emergency Measures Act. I love that he clips it out. But I have to tell you, the guy's a little, I don't know. And look, maybe this is the pot calling the kettle black, but he's a little too Canadian for me.
Order a lot.
Oh, here we go. Something's
Order a
starting.
lot.
Okay, guys. I'm joking, of course. Hobo, please stay.
The Public Order Emergency Commission is now in session. La commission sur l'état d'urgence est maintenant ouverte.
Okay, good morning, bonjour. So we're at the last day of the public hearings on the facts. There will be, of course, the public hearings on policy matters. Alors, c'est la dernière journée pour recevoir les faits pertinents.
What?
Et évidemment, il y aura la période de politique la semaine prochaine. So,
luckily, there won't be too much French.
I think we're ready for the next witness.
I don't
Commission
think.
Counsel.
Shantona Chaudhry for the Commission. Our next and final witness is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
There we go. Oh, where's my bell? Dang it. My bell's in the other room. Okay, this is what we've been waiting for. This has been going on for a month. Yeah. Yes, the puppet order is now in session. Carrie, yeah, I mean, this is not like this guy, the guy that just introduced everything there. He's not a judge; he's a commissioner. So this is a weird thing. It's an inquiry. It's
Maybe we'll take a few minutes. I'm not sure where the process is, a bit anticlimactic.
Wait, what? Where is he?
So
Should we take 5 minutes?
Changing his socks?
I think we'll take 5 minutes then and see, and you can come and get me when it is. Thank you.
The commission is in
Oh,
recess
no,
for
okay.
5 minutes. La commission est pour 5 minutes.
Oh, there he is there. Way to make an entrance.
Go ahead. It's just a bit of a false start. So, nothing to do with your appearance. You're welcome to come
Ben
in.
Johnson.
Obviously, we're happy to get started.
Can the witness be sworn or affirmed?
Mr. Prime Minister, will you swear on a religious document or do you wish to affirm?
J'aimerais le faire sur la Bible, s'il vous plaît.
How much French is he going to be going into? This is going to drive me nuts. He best be speaking a lot in English. What was that?
Pour les fins de procès verbal, s'il vous plaît, veuillez indiquer et ensuite épeler votre nom en entier.
Oui, j'affirme. Et Justin Trudeau, Justin-Trudeau.
Jurez-vous que le témoignage que vous allez rendre devant la commission sera la vérité, toute la vérité et rien que la vérité, que Dieu vous mène en aide?
Je l'affirme.
How much
Merci.
French is this going to be?
Merci.
How much French is this going to be? Yo, evil. Oh, sorry. Bonjour, evil Ian. Evil Ian. Good Lord. What's up,
Just
Dave?
before we get started, there, as I understand it, as you heard, there will probably be some testimony in English and some in French. So please, if you need translation equipment,
Yeah, he's gonna
should,
say all the
have
stuff.
it in hand.
You know, all the important stuff in French.
it-
Good morning, Prime
Lord.
Minister.
Hate it.
Morning.
Thank you for being here.
English only at
So
the
we'll
poker
start with the
table.
routine housekeeping. You recall being interviewed by Commission Counsel on September 9th of this year?
Yes.
Okay. And after that interview, Commission Counsel prepared a summary of your interview.
Yes.
For the record, we don't need to call it up, Mr. Clerk, but it's WTS.5084. And Prime Minister, you reviewed that summary and you can confirm that it's accurate to the best of your knowledge.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll add there that, of course, it's a summary. It's not an exact transcript of your words, but it's a prepared summary, and we're all aware of that. So, Prime Minister, as you
He's so
know, you are
hateable.
the final witness to testify before the Commission. So at this point, the Commission has heard a lot of evidence about the events of January and February leading up to your government's decision to declare a public order emergency on February 14th. But what we haven't heard yet is your perspective. So your own perspective, your viewpoint, both as the Prime Minister leading the country through these events and the decision maker in the government's ultimate decision to invoke the Emergencies Act for the first time in that act's history. So we have 2 hours together this morning, and I anticipate that the examination is going to proceed in 2 parts. The first part will consist of fairly specific questions taking you through the chronology of events, often with reference to documents that have been adduced before the Commission, readouts of your own calls. And the second part will consist of some bigger picture questions, so addressing some of the key themes that have arisen out of these events and the government's response to it. So let's start with the chronology of events, and I'll warn you, we're going to fly through this pretty quickly. 2 hours is not a lot of time to fly through everything
2
that
hours.
happened between these days. But if ever you feel like you need to add
So
in some
she has
narrative
2
or
hours to go
explanation, please feel
through
free to do so.
all of this stuff.
So we'll start with just the pre-arrival days. So before the convoy
why
arrived
he
in Ottawa.
called it.
We-
And
we
she's
know
gonna
that
be
you
a good
learned
team
the
player, I
convoy
bet.
was on its way a few days before, maybe around January 24th, and you were briefed on it. by both officials from PCO and your own staff from PMO. Can you recall what your expectation was at that point? So you've been briefed, the convoy is on its way. What did you anticipate was going to happen?
Mais on avait vu pendant les mois qui ont précédé un niveau de frustration et de dissatisfaction avec les politiques gouvernementales par rapport au mandat, par rapport à la vaccination.
This is bullshit.
Et on avait entendu de la rhétorique assez corsée de la part de plusieurs personnes à travers le pays.
Where do we get the instant translation? What is going on?
Pendant
This
la
is
campagne
ridiculous.
électorale qui s'était passée
She
6 mois
asked the
avant.
question in
Alors,
English.
de voir
Why would you
que
answer in French?
Ces groupes allaient
So what does he think is going to happen? This is
venir manifester à
ridiculous
Ottawa.
bullshit.
On s'attendait un petit peu
Underwater Spanish hobo chili. Amazing.
On a régulièrement des manifestations à travers le pays. On est vigilant, on est attentif, mais on se prépare dans la mesure du possible.
Vous avez parlé du...
Oh my God! So now we don't even get to hear the question in French or in English. This is ridiculous. One second here.
On a pu
Ian, you say why
consulter
French?
les
Because
Canadiens
he doesn't want
directement sur les
everyone to
mesures qu'on voulait
hear him. He doesn't want everyone to
amener
understand what
pour
he's saying.
protéger la santé publique,
So,
c'est-à-dire spécifiquement
this is ridiculous. And
les exigences de vaccination pour quiconque voulait embarquer dans un train ou dans un avion, ou bien travailler pour la fonction publique fédérale. Et
Okay,
c'était
so,
des
I mean,
gros
are we gonna
enjeux,
have a
grosses
translator
décisions
here or
de
what? Like,
limiter l'accès au transport
good Lord, guys,
fédéral
this is
comme ça.
ridiculous.
Donc pour moi c'était important.
I'm gonna see if anyone has it translating. Yeah, Amy, I don't know what's happening either. This is the problem, you know, with the French. So I'm just gonna see if we can find any live feed that's translating it. Let's see.
Transit, or
Here.
people who wanted to work
Here
for
we
the
go. I found one.
federal public service. That was a major decision to limit access to public transportation. And so it was very important that Canadians could speak their mind with regard to this. We want to keep people healthy and safe, and I thought it was totally appropriate to have healthy and strong debates on those issues. And that's exactly what happened during the elections. Several parties were for what we were saying, others were strongly against, and Canadians during this campaign could speak their minds. What we also saw, my team and myself, we saw a certain level of frustration, of demonstration, and of a certain level of aggressiveness. Let's say a certain intensity of emotions with regard to that campaign, with regard to what we were proposing. And that exceeded what we had seen in prior political events or such campaigns.
Yeah, because since they were better at doing it than everyone else in the past, let's punish them, even though they were. Anyways.
We saw that in the few months prior, and we were suspecting this could reach up to Ottawa with that convoy.
We'll be switching back and forth a few times. You saw the protest coming and you've been briefed on it, and as you said, Ottawa's used to dealing with big protests, but there was maybe a hint that something could be a little bit different here. So there was a hint of worry there. And then, of course, we know that the convoy arrived on, started arriving on the 28th and then went into full swing on the 29th. What was that first weekend like when the convoy arrived from your point of view?
It was awesome.
First of all, one of the things that we noted in the run-up to the arrival was a bit of a bit of a disconnect between what the sort of political arms of my office were seeing and expecting from what we'd seen on social media, colored by our experiences from the campaign that was only a few months before, contrasted with the assurances by whether it was Ottawa Police Services or even the public
Yes,
service,
he's still not
that this was just a normal, quote unquote, style of protest that we see on the Hill fairly regularly. And there was already a little bit of worry that this might be a different brand of event than Canadians were used to seeing. And we certainly saw during the first weekend that the expectations that the police had said that they would simply go home, the ability to keep it under control was not exactly there.
Okay, and I think starting on that Sunday, you made a few calls to various MPs in your Ottawa caucus, sort of checking in and seeing how people were doing, because there was a level of concern there. So on that note, I'll ask Mr. Clerk to please pull up ssm.can.nsc402813. While that's being pulled up, it's a readout of a call that you had on Sunday, January 30th with Yasser Naqvi. Just for the benefit of everyone in the room, can you tell us who Yasser Naqvi is?
Yasser is the Member of Parliament for Ontario, for Ottawa Centre.
Okay, perfect. So if we can just scroll down to the text
Yes,
here.
good
Mr.
morning to LA.
There we go.
Everyone sang, say love you, sang. And hey,
that's
Roots.
right.
And,
Doing and how are folks in the
I forgot to
community.
tell you.
And Mr. Naqvi says,
But
very dire.
just to let everyone know what's going on
Community
here,
feels
since if you just
under
got in here,
siege. You can imagine
this is
how
the Emergency
much
Measures Act.
trade
They're trying to get to the
talking.
bottom to see if
None of
Trudeau
them
should
are-
have
they forget it's also
ordered
the neighborhood,
the army, and
especially
basically, not the
low-income
army, but
families.
the Emergency
I've been getting
Measures
a lot of
Act.
feedback.
And
Also
this
been
is
in
it.
touch with
They
Marco,
got Trudeau where they want him. They got him here. Now he's going to be here all day. This is going to be a marathon. I'm going to be here and not. I might have some stuff to do, but I'm going to come and go. She might be hosting the show later for a little bit. While I go drop off something at your mom's. Anyways, enjoy. I'll be doing commentary in a little in between, but we're gonna listen to.
Hopefully pick a booze.
I'll pick up some booze.
Okay, I'll do
poster on a
Okay,
truck of
just-
Hitler and
this
your
is-
name underneath.
Here we go.
This is the kind of grossness our country is subject
So this lawyer here, she's questioning, but I think she's on his side. It's gonna be like 2 hours before we get any good lawyers up here asking questions that are gonna make him squirm. But for now, we're doing this for you.
Sleep at night.
Since I missed 2 days
And
this
you
week.
then reply, there doesn't seem like much clarity on how long this will last. And then you refer to an incident at the Shepherd of Good Hope.
Sorry.
And then finally, your last comment here is, I'm so sorry, my friend, this is just horrible. The RCMP is concerned, everyone's on eggshells. Having this going on in our nation's capital is just totally irresponsible. So to some extent, that's self-explanatory, but I'm wondering if you can help us a little bit in explaining the context of that call and what Mr. Naqvi was referring to and what you'd observed yourself.
Well, I dare say that citizens of Ottawa are used to political activity and protests on the Hill on a range of things. But this was present and in their daily lives and disrupting their weekend in a way that wasn't a usual political protest. From the intimidation and harassment of people for wearing masks to a very concerning story about folks disrupting the nearby homeless shelter and soup kitchen.
They were feeding the homeless, sorry.
There were indications that there was a level of
we saw it live.
Disregard for others that unfortunately we had seen examples of during the election campaign. And it emphasized for me that this was the same kind of thing that we had seen, the intensity, the anger, the hateful rhetoric.
Okay. Moving on then, Mr. Clerk, to the next document, SSM.
I don't recall any hateful rhetoric, to be honest, except for that one flag that they're linking back to your government.
So, Prime Minister,
You
this
don't
is
want them
moving
to,
on
that's
to the next
the fun
day. So
part.
That would be Monday the 31st. I think at some point there was.
It's true. His suit is an extra medium, Hobo points out.
Yeah,
In girl size.
totally.
Call with Mayor Jim Watson of
I
Ottawa.
noticed that.
We'll just look at a couple of things here. The initial reference is to a press conference you've done, and he tells you hit it at the park, hit all the right notes, and then says these people had their time and
playing
need to move
baseball
on.
music, or are they taking care of a
and
protest?
he's trying to get this across to the chief of police, be chief slowly. So Mayor Watson was obviously very focused on putting an end to the protest if he can. Scrolling down then, that last bit, JW, that's Mayor Watson. Chief of police said it's so volatile, but kept under control so far. Trucks are starting to leave, but the diehards chained themselves to
Like
this.
all of the stories. It's just stories they're hearing about. Rumors. A hint, a sense, a feeling. What if it escalates to this? Yes, bouncy castles of death were happening. Good God. We saw it live. It's amazing.
A little more. We have to do this with a sense of balance. These guys are just looking for a fight, and your comment back on that.
This is it.
Down
This
to
is
Mr.
it, baby.
Clerk
This is the
is
last day you're going to have to
the
deal with
Rangers
this
will have
shit.
no
You're going to be
choice.
happy as
I'm
hell.
so
She hates it. She
excited.
hates it.
Counterbalance. So we all have to be careful. Can you explain those
Well,
last
it's the
few comments and what the
stupidest
balance and counterbalance you were referring to there?
Can you scroll back up to the?
Sorry.
Okay,
Hobo
no, just
says it reminds
keep
him of
both
the Office
Jim's,
episode where
line
Michael
and
Scott
mine
buys a
on the
woman's
screen.
suit.
There we go.
Here we go. Let's see. What's he saying here?
Wait, don't be depressed.
Hello.
Yeah,
Today,
I mean,
Junior.
these calls were very much about me understanding what's happening from a local sense, and there was expression in this that there were some people who were more intense in the protests than others. Some were just along to be part of something that they agreed with. Others were really shaping it and driving it, and I think. I believe, I'm not entirely sure what I was saying there. I'm not sure the transcript is exactly right either, but it's enough, this sense that we didn't want to further provoke, but we need to be firm in standing up for people. We need to encourage people to leave, but if they see that the numbers are starting to dwindle, the ones who remain will be more intense. So there's a sense already that as we manage this, we have to be careful. We want to make sure that we support and protect people living in the city, that we're allowing for life to get to normal despite this protest, without inciting inciting any
Thank you,
reactions
Hubba, I
that
agree.
amplify them further.
He's gonna fly away.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Oh, he's so helpful.
The next one, Mr. Clerk, is ssm.can.nsc 402814. So now we're at Wednesday, February 2nd, and this is a call that you have with Anita Vandenbeld. So again, can you tell us, Prime Minister, who Anita Vandenbeld is?
Anita is a member of Parliament for Ottawa
Amy, get something to eat, for God's sakes. Jesus, Louise.
East, or I believe that's it. Anyway, she's just to the west of downtown. She's a longtime MP and a very strong community member of Parliament, and she was expressing here just how the tone of and the tenor of this, what was going on in the neighborhoods and around people, was worse and more hateful and different from anything she had seen before in a number of years as an MP, but a long time involved in political engagement.
So you remember this call?
Yes, I do, very much.
Okay, so we'll just read through a little bit of what Ms. Vandenbeld said.
He remembers very much. I bet later on other
starting maybe say,
lawyers
I wanted to check in, how are
are
you
talking to him. He's
doing?
not going to remember anything.
She says,
This is
"I
how it
really
works with all these
appreciate
guys.
it. I'm
They remember
torn,
everything
I'm
when they're talking to
scared,
their lawyer.
But I get really
and when
mad
they get
that
on to
I'm
the other ones,
scared.
they don't remember
Kids with autism,
nothing.
the noise.
I
It's one
don't
of
know
those things
nothing.
You feel like it's okay. Well, it's awful. I'm not a stranger to volatile environments, but it's different because I know the sentiment is directed towards us.
It's
you
different. There's
particularly.
bouncy
There's
castles,
this
and they're
hate
giving
for
food to the
liberals.
homeless, and there's
And
Canadian
then after
flags
that,
everywhere.
I do think it
And,
may deter some young women looking
and the
for
honking.
politics. I don't want anything to happen to one of us, God forbid you, before we start thinking about all of this. And then she speaks about constituents calling about what the PM is going to do about it. It's hard, and she says it's hard because I know it's not within your purview. People are frustrated and they just want somebody to do something to get the city back. And then she speaks about some other hateful messages that she's observed. And you say it's about how you balance it again, being responsible and reasonable. So the part of this that I'd like you to speak to, Prime Minister, is where she says a lot of constituents are calling me about what the PM, what the Prime Minister is going to do about this. And she then says, it's hard because I know it's not within your purview. So what does that refer to?
That actually refers to one of the challenges and things that we were struggling with from the early days of the pandemic, of the convoy occupation, which is that because they were very visibly most motivated to protest the federal government and federal government policies, even though many of the mandates they were actually vocally concerned about were provincial measures, but it was very clear that they had targeted Ottawa and the seat of our federal government deliberately, that it was a federal protest in a city that houses the capital. There is an impression and an expectation that therefore it's it's the federal government's responsibility to deal with it, to make sure that it goes away, to stop it. There is a general expectation, even by people who are longtime residents of Ottawa, that this is somehow like Washington, D.C., that is a separate enclave where the RCMP can give out traffic tickets, which they don't. But there is a blending of orders of government in protection of Parliament Hill and the precinct that led a lot of people to say, well, they're here, they're angry at the Prime Minister, they're disrupting my neighborhood. The federal government should really do something to get rid of these protesters or move them along or have them leave. Where we were continually explaining, as Anita said, it's not in our purview, the management of Wellington Street, of neighborhoods around was the jurisdiction of the Ottawa Police Service. And
we lived in
if
Ottawa,
they needed support, the OPP and then the RCMP could be providing extra supports, but it was their jurisdiction.
Yeah, there's really nobody that lives there. And on the weekends after 5 o'clock, it's
all
a ghost
liars.
town. Yeah, and politicians.
Someone complains about garbage pickup. They don't want you to hear you say, oh, no, that's not a federal issue, that's municipal. They say, thank you, I'll make sure we pass that message along, and we'll try and see sure that gets fixed. The idea that I was saying, this is not a federal policing issue, this is not a federal issue, this occupation, this is something that Ottawa Police have jurisdiction need to take care of. For a lot of people, sort of say, well, like, see, they're here because of the federal government, and the federal government is refusing to do anything about it. Was the kind of blending of narratives that we had to be really careful about.
I think we're going to come back to that when I start asking about Ontario's initial response to all of this, but we're not quite there yet. So I'll take you a few more things, and then I'll ask you to pick up where you left off there.
Back there in a second.
So far, we've been looking at some calls you've had with your own MPs from your caucus. The next one, Mr. Clerk, you can pull up, it's ssm.can 407738, is a call that you had with, on February 3rd, Candace Bergen, who I believe had just become leader of the opposition in the House. I confess I was yesterday years old when I learned that, but I now know. Okay, so this is a call you then have on Wednesday, February 3rd with Ms. Bergen. And do you recall this? Do you remember this call, Prime Minister?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and can you tell us what inspired that call? Or
it was mostly a congratulatory call when someone becomes leader of a political party that sits opposite us in the House. I tend to reach out and have a bit of a personal conversation. I usually ask after family, see how they're adjusting to it, to give some recommendations about trying to get enough sleep. But I try and keep it a human introductory call, even though I had engaged with her many times in the House over the years as an MP. When she became leader, I wanted to reach out and establish that personal contact. Of course, it was all happening in the context of this occupation going on, so that was part of the discussion, but primarily it was a congratulatory call.
Okay. Get enough sleep is always good advice. Mr. Clerk, can we scroll down a little bit? Here we see.
Yeah, I can't use the close-up until
There
they
we go.
go
Okay,
back
so
to
this is the
the
part of the
document on it.
conversation that you start talking about the security situation in Ottawa. You say the second set of briefing would be security situation in Ottawa right now. Obviously of real concern, and we have lots of disagreement on causes and path forward. I would certainly like to make sure you're getting briefings on safety and the situation and have you at least fully informed. Hopefully, we're all going to be able to make sure Canada's democracy continues to run and our institutions remain strong, and quite frankly, the citizens of Ottawa get back to their regular lives. Scroll down again, please, to the next page, Mr. Clerk. So Ms. Bergen says, absolutely, I agree. I'm sure you weren't following question period today, but that's what I'd like to see some resolution. You're right, we disagree on some
I wish the
things,
Parliament was like The
but I would
Office.
agree
It'd be,
with you.
it'd be way
Goals,
better.
Let's find a way for people to head back home and clear things up in Ottawa. We do want the same things. If you have some ideas.
Oh, she's being an ass kiss, Carrie, because that's what her job is. And she's going to do this for 2 hours, and then we're going to get to people. This is going to go on until like supper, after supper tonight. Quite possibly. Yeah. You're going to get sick of us by the end of it.
And getting people back to normal lives. Let's ensure
You
there are
get to
discussions
enjoy
on that, and there may be opportunities to work
torture.
together. Some of them, and I think you're referring to the protesters there, have jammed themselves into a corner,
I'm so
and their
sorry.
acts are non-starters.
Evil.
We have our democracy and our institutions. That is well worth.
Hey, look, I missed 2 days this week, so I'm making it up. I'm doing overtime here. Like triple, quadruple, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times the work today.
Right.
People need to be heard. and
But
that's part of our
as a
democracy,
result,
that
it
balance, right?
makes me
Ms.
suffer.
Bergen says she
Sorry,
believes
everyone.
everything's
I don't know.
fine.
He
You do
missed
have to be
this.
cautious.
Makes everyone
And as
suffer.
PM, you don't want to set a bad precedent. I'm sure you're talking and coming up with some ideas, and then she offers to help. So the part of that I'd like you to elaborate on is, it appears there that you're talking, and I take it the olive branch is a suggestion of some engagement with the protesters, some talking to in whatever capacity that would end up being. So what comes out of this conversation that you have with Ms. Bergen,
Is he gonna
and
talk
what was
again?
in your mind at the time?
I say, we have
You can read.
ensure there are discussions on that. Let's ensure there are discussions on that was very much, let's make sure as political parties, we keep talking about it, figuring out how we can work together. And then, some of their asks are non-starters, like overturning the results of the election that we just had. But in terms of responding to their demands or legitimizing them by engaging, I'm highlighting that I'm worried about setting a precedent that a blockade on Wellington Street can lead to changing public policy. People need to be heard, but we need to get that balance right. And then she agreed that I need to be cautious, and I don't want to set any bad precedents.
There's that in school. You don't.
Okay, so
Oh,
fairly
yeah, like you
self-explanatory.
can't really see his
There's
hands from where I'm.
a willingness to discuss,
I'm gonna try
but
to
you were
fix that
concerned
a
about
little
setting
bit.
a precedent where
He does play a lot of
a blockade could equal a change in public policy. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think we have a robust functioning democracy, and public protests are an important part of making sure we're getting messages out there, and Canadians are getting messages out there and highlighting how they feel about various issues. But using protests to demand changes to public policy is something that I think is worrisome.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Although, sorry, to a certain
No,
extent.
please go on.
Protests, if you're out protesting that the government is, shutting down a safe injection site or something, you are asking for changes in public policy. But there is a difference between occupations and
only if you're in favor of, only if you're like
saying
it
we're
goes in line
not
with us,
going
then you
until
can
this is
protest and
changed
occupy all you want.
in a way that is massively disruptive. And potentially dangerous, versus just saying, we're protesting because we want public policy to change, and we're trying to convince people to get enough of them that politicians will listen to enough people saying, okay, I'm going to lose votes if I don't change this. That's the usual way protests can be effective in our democracies.
Okay, that's a fair point of distinction. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, the next document is ssm.can.nsc 402819. So, Prime Minister, we're now heading into the second weekend of the protests, so Saturday, February 3rd, and our understanding is that the protest intensified again with more trucks coming into Ottawa.
Elect red, green.
And on that day,
You're
on the
right.
Saturday, you have a call with the Governor General.
Seen it all,
Simon, do you
says you
recall?
guys are more
Do you remember
fucked
that
than we
call?
are.
Yes, I do.
Elect red, green.
Okay, so
It's
here
true.
is the readout of it, and we'll just go through some of, or quite a bit of actually,
she's
what
gonna
was said on
ramble on
that
for a
call. So again,
Trudeau was
there's
right.
the introduction, and you say it's been stressful, not so much for me personally. The Governor General says, yes, they seem reluctant to give it up also, makes it challenging. And you say, yep,
Oh, I hate.
people blame the feds, but
someone
many of the
reads
mandates, not
somebody
us.
that's
And for the police, well, we don't direct them. Trying to get
That's
this
a big-
resolved as
that's a big
peacefully
part
as
of this.
possible. We want them to
But I
find
mean,
a
they're
way
trying to
save
get
face,
these
but they
people on
can't
their own
shut down
words.
our
Not her,
democracy.
but like generally, that's
Sorry,
what they're trying to use their own
throw
words
you
against
into
them
this also.
when they're
You just
trying to
don't
uncover stuff,
understand
right?
the
So this is it's
institutions.
very important in general to have
And
these
then the Governor
things
General
documented
has
that
to
they
go
say
further on
because
that.
they don't remember much.
Actually, I'll stop there.
Why
Do
is
you
the
remember what you're
redacted
referring
stuff?
to
I
in that
hate
paragraph
redacted.
there?
Because the
Yeah,
redacted
that was
is all the important stuff that would incriminate
Exactly.
them.
a
So
memorandum
what
of
the fuck?
understanding that
Why?
some groups within, or some group within the protesters had declared that what they wanted was to empower the Senate to work with the Governor General to create a provisional government or appoint a government committee that would change public policy, and displayed a lack of understanding of how our democracy and our institutions actually work.
Okay.
But I mean, it also meant she was getting bombarded. The Rideau Hall, which is filled with good people giving out medals to worthy Canadians, were bombarded constantly by demands that she fire the Prime Minister, and in a very, very aggressive way. And that's what I was referring to as tough for her and tough for her team.
Understood. And is that what prompted this call?
Could have been part of it, but I also speak regularly with the Governor General just to check in, and obviously this was something that was worthwhile checking in on. But yes, that was probably the reason.
Fair enough. Okay, so then she asked if there's any sense on how it will be resolved, and you say something,
Redacted.
and then now they're starting to do that.
No. He said a bunch of other stuff before that we don't see. And then he said, now they're starting to do
It's
that.
not a protest, more an occupation, hard to diffuse.
I'm guessing he probably said, well, there's lots of reasons that we can't do this or that, but we're working on ways around it.
And then there's some
How about that?
discussion of the funding. Scroll down a bit, Mr. Clerk.
Hand waving intensifies. Hand waving
next page,
intensifies. Trudeau.
And then the Governor General says, yeah, there's some of the senior staff getting a lot of hateful emails.
Look at under this.
Asking for
The Prime Minister says, my recommendation was to go to HL for me. We'll be back in RC tomorrow evening and hoping to get back on the Hill. And then the rest is a huge redacted. It's all irrelevant, apparently.
discuss the security situation. So is that where you were just referring to, Prime Minister? And
Yes.
the sort of bombardment? Okay. So just generally speaking, before we move on, what was your sense of where things were at on that second weekend?
Smoking another joint.
The first weekend, caught everyone by surprise. Through the second weekend, I think I mentioned it in referring to Bill Blair, talking with the local police with his own expertise and background, talking about things that can be done to try to de-escalate, to start putting an end to this, understanding that it can't happen overnight, but that there are things that should be done. There was an expectation or a hope that on that second weekend, we would see a decrease in activity and a dwindling. Instead, we saw a surge on that second weekend, and things that we had heard that the police were going to start doing this or doing that, and we're going to be able to respond, didn't seem to be materializing. There was a sense that the occupation was just continuing full swing without any real control or even plan to end it. And I know from conversations with MPs and others that the citizens of Ottawa were quite frantic about having to go through a second weekend of horns.
No. The truckers said they were going to go when the mandates were dropped for the border, so shut up.
Masks and not being able to go to their neighborhood stores and seeing the Rideau Centre shut down and all these different things that were really problematic. And people were starting to get pretty upset that this was 2 full weekends that they were being massively disrupted by.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Take that one down. So speaking of getting a little upset, the next topic I want to address with you is Ontario's initial response to the protest in those early weeks. So one theme that's emerged from the evidence we've heard, and we've seen several references to it in the documents, is your government's frustration and your own frustration with what might be characterized as a certain reluctance on the part of Ontario to engage, especially in the tripartite tables that Minister Blair, I think, had put together. So, Mr. Clerk, can you pull up ssm.can.nsc 402837? This is the readout from a call that you had, Prime Minister, with Mayor Jim Watson on February 8th. Excuse me.
No mute? Can't mute yourself when you cough,
Okay,
lady?
so just keep scrolling a bit,
I know,
Mr. Clerk.
she sure is,
Pass
Carrie.
the key takeaways onto page 2. So just to stop there, give a bit of situation. So Mr. Mayor Watson here brings
She's
up
trying to
the
cough up
expression
excuses for him,
whack-a-mole,
Carrie.
which we've heard several times in the commission.
But that's what she's there
Fighting a
for.
losing battle.
There'll be other
if we
lawyers
don't have enough
later on that
police.
are not
and he
so nice to him.
replied
And
that
we're waiting for
that's-
Miller time is what we're waiting for.
that's
We're waiting for
entirely
Brandon
right.
Miller.
I
He's
know we're
the
looking carefully at
lawyer
that.
for the
We're looking
convoy
at resourcing,
organizers.
And then you say
And
on the Ottawa policing
when it's Miller
side,
time, it could go
you've
either
seen,
way.
as I have,
He
some
sometimes
concerns
he
on
loses
how
his
things were
cool,
handled
but
at the beginning.
anyways.
You asked about, Mayor Watson's
Yes, he got
relationship
kicked out
with
a
the
few
police
days
chief
ago,
and how they're
but he's
working
back in.
together.
He was here
And
yesterday.
you
He'll be
observe
right.
that there are moments where Mayor Watson is saying one thing and the chief is saying another, and
She's
ask
gonna
if,
die.
if there's anything you can do about that. So just briefly before we go on, can you comment on that a little bit and the Ottawa policing
Maskless. Look at these two
situation to the
maskless
extent that you were
partygoers, by the
briefed
way.
on and aware of it?
One of the things we'd said from the very beginning to the RCMP and to the Commissioner of the RCMP and to government in general, that if there was anything we could do to support the Ottawa Police Services in what they were doing, if we had resources or abilities, because there is a federal presence in this capital city, we should do it. That we were there to be helpful. I instructed Brenda to try and do whatever she could to send support to the city of Ottawa. What we got back, or what we had heard, as I recall, were different numbers from what the mayor said Ottawa needed to what the police chief was saying they needed. And the one thing that the commissioner made clear to me was they needed to know that if they were deploying resources, that they were going to be appropriately used, that there was a plan for that. And we see it sometimes in requests for
They don't need
assistance
an
across the
interpreter
country,
because he uses his hands
where
so
someone
much.
will say, "We need 20,000 police officers," or we need the military to come in with 1,000 troops, or we need this or that in RFAs. And part of our due diligence is, okay, what do you need them for? What are you going to be doing them for? Because, for example, if you're sending in military, as we did in Hurricane Fiona, to help clear power lines, as was necessary in Atlantic Canada, in no situation do military members engage in policing activity. And there was a sense that maybe they could be directing traffic. And we have to make sure, no, they're not police. Military isn't there to play police roles. And that's why we always have questions that, okay, we're going to send resources, but we need to know how they're going to be deployed. And there wasn't always that clarity around what the plan was, how many they actually needed, how they were being used, and how they were, how where they were going to be best deployed.
Okay.
I'm going to go.
Just keep scrolling down, please, Mr. Clerk. I'll tell you when to stop.
I'm going to go to the
Keep going,
booze store
please. Oh, no.
and
sorry,
run an
Mr.
errand.
There we go.
And
So Mayor
Royce just
Watson
came on.
says,
No one's going to be
"I'm
over
gonna
here for a
ask
couple
after
hours.
this phone call whether
So,
the federal government will live
it's
up
all
to its
good.
commitment.
You and Carrie can hang out.
Very shortly. It's not dying
Carrie,
down.
we're
Took over
hanging.
Metcalf Street, blocked all
But
of
I
it.
left you with 3
And
joints.
you
That should
reply,
tide you
"Listen,
over.
Yes, you can say the federal government will be here, there with more resources. But again, the thing that frustrates me, and everyone is conflated.
Okay,
But Doug
and here's,
Ford is
well, I don't know if
hiding
I can
from
just leave this screen on and it'll be
responsibility on
fine.
it For political reasons, as you highlighted. And important, I suppose, it's important that
I
we
can
don't let them get
always
away
go
from
to,
that. We intend to support you on that. And Mayor Watson replies, if they keep dragging their feet, I'm happy to call them out on it. It would be nice if we got something firmed up with the federal government to shame them. Ford didn't even make an effort to come and see what's going on. So can I just ask you, Prime Minister, to comment a bit on the politics that are going on there?
Well, first of all, when I say everyone is, I believe, is conflating, it was conflating, a protest of federal issues with a federal responsibility to do the policing that would dissipate that protest. So that was, a little bit of an interplay that there was a sense that in the initial phases of the protest, the Ontario government was happy for the perception to be out there that this was a City of Ottawa issue and a federal government issue, and that as a province, they really didn't have a responsibility or a jurisdiction to play in there. It was a unpleasant situation. There were bad headlines. I was getting grumbled at by citizens of Ottawa every day because the federal government wasn't dealing with it. I can understand that provincial politicians who were being overlooked in the complaints everyone had about why this wasn't getting resolved would say, you know what, let's not poke our noses into this, and people will continue criticizing those people that help. I'm fairly certain that behind the scenes, the OPP was engaged with Ottawa Police Services and was providing support as we were as a federal government. But I think at the political level, there was probably a decision to
ride for a minute myself.
continue
But
to stay back.
hang with LA, a special moment with you guys. Enjoy.
Sorry, I'm not very entertaining.
During the pandemic and during other crises
you're gonna make me
is
hear
when
with
the
this
three orders of government are able to work seamlessly together. Not only does it deliver better results and better coordination, but it actually reassures citizens to see that people who are not always politically aligned at the highest levels can roll up their sleeves and work for the benefit of citizens. And that's certainly something that I've always tried to do, and I've been able to do with Premier Ford on many, many issues. But at this point in the evolution of the occupation, that wasn't something that we were able to do. And so, yes, there was a bit of frustration about it.
Okay, well, and we'll see that the very next day you had a call with Premier Ford, and just in the narrative, what was going on at this point is, in addition to Ottawa, and there were a few things, as we know, going on across the country, but by this time, the 7th, 8th, 9th, the Ambassador Bridge blockade had really heated up and was in full swing, and that seemed to be a turning point in several ways, but certainly for Ontario's participation in all of this. So, Mr. Clerk, if you can take that document down, please, and bring up ssm.can.nsc 402845. So, point for advocacy, to make a long story short, this is a call where it seems that you and Premier Ford are engaging and deciding to work together to solve this problem at this point. We can skip over the first, here we go, the last part of that first paragraph. So PDF, Premier Doug Ford. He says, what we can recommend and what we can work together on is I've asked our AG, our Attorney General, to look at legal ways to give police more tools and exhaust legal remedies, because the police are a little shy and I can't direct them. So that's one area we can focus on. We can't take their polar licenses. We checked that. We can shut down their fuel consumption and cordon off highways. That's where we're at. And
Might be operator licenses. I don't.
yeah, probably not polar, but operator licenses. Let's go with that. So then you reply, first of all, they're not a legal protest. They're occupying a municipal street and are not legally parked. You shouldn't need more tools, legal tools. They're barricading the Ontario economy and doing millions of dollars of damage a day and harming people's lives. At a time we're trying to draw in investments, a whole bunch of people are looking at this and saying, we can't even clear up a protest on a bridge. So just stopping there, Prime Minister, do you remember what you were referring to when you start talking about you shouldn't need more tools?
I mean, that whole question around legality or illegality of the protest, they didn't have a permit to protest. They not certainly as long as they had. They were illegally parked. They were engaged in disruptive activities. There are any number of municipal and provincial bylaw infractions and legal infractions that they were engaged in by just being there. And there is a sense that, and this was based on an earlier conversation I had with Bill Blair about how one proceeds in this, is, you can enforce small things as a way of keeping the situation under control and creating boundaries and balances and moving towards it. It's an approach. The issue here was that there were things that they could do and things that I know were tried that they realized were unsafe for them to do. There are stories of police officers getting swarmed there when they tried to arrest someone with a jerry can filled with gasoline. There was a sense that, giving out simple tickets wasn't really having much of an impact as they did that. And taking stronger measures was going to be resisted and met with significant resistance. But these are things that if they feel they didn't have the resources to enforce a prohibition on bringing in jerry cans or a prohibition of parking on the approach to the Ambassador Bridge, well, let us give you more resources to do that. Between the OPP and the RCMP, we should be able to get the numbers up in a way that could lead for an ability to use those existing tools on the books. That was very much where our thinking was at that point. Like how many more police officers, how much more resources do you need to get a plan? And if there was a concern around, we can't get those police allocated to us from other jurisdictions unless there is a clear plan, we'll send you planners. We'll help get those people there so you can establish a plan that will allow itself to be deployed. There was really a sense that there was more things that could be done, and he seemed to be agreeing.
Okay, and that's actually what you end up saying in the part you can't see right now of that, the next page, the paragraph.
I am at least consistent.
Exactly. So you say the Bridges and Tunnels Act means the federal government has something. I can't read that anymore, but the federal government has responsibility over the bridge and border. So there's a role for us to play. We're happy to play it, but nobody can get on the bridge because they're on municipal land being blocked. So we'll give you whatever resources you need. The police of jurisdiction need to do their job. If they're saying they can't do it because they don't have enough officers or equipment, we need to remove that excuse as soon as possible so they can do their work and we can prevent Ontario from becoming a laughingstock. Mr. Clerk, just scroll down to the last page, please. We'll skip over. There's some jurisdictional discussions going on there. And then just at the top of that page, please, Mr. Clerk. So this is the sort of the conclusion of the conversation. You say, what are the next steps? You've said the OPP are going in. Are they keeping you apprised? And do they understand the urgency? They can't talk this out for 3 weeks. They need to act immediately. And I'm assuming there the concern of acting immediately is brought about by the situation on Ambassador Bridge, which we heard a lot about from the Deputy Prime Minister yesterday. Premier Ford replies they'll act, but without directing them, it's hard to describe their game plan. They'll have a plan, unlike Ottawa, where they didn't have a plan. I'll get briefed tomorrow from the Solicitor General, would keep you updated. This is critical. I hear you. I'll be up their ass with a wire brush. Then the next, you say, yes, that's one of the quotable quotes of the commission. There have been a few, that's one. The next, your reply there is, well, we're there with resources. Bill Blair will coordinate on our side. You can reach out to LeBlanc, Minister LeBlanc or me. You and I need to work together on this. People will be reassured by the two of us working together. We need to demonstrate this is not a place of lawlessness. Okay, we can take that down. Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
I will say, though, that they can't talk this out for 3 weeks. They need to act immediately. I wasn't just talking about the Ambassador Bridge. I was talking about Ottawa as well. I was talking about the fact that this simply can't continue to be stretched out this way. But when I say they need to act immediately, obviously, I'm not directing the Premier to direct police. We know all the limitations that we have, but there was an expectation that this was a situation that was going on for too long. And as Doug pointed out a couple paragraphs later, there is a sense that the police of jurisdiction had lost control and wasn't able to control the situation.
Okay, that's fair. Yes, I took the document down before we got to Ottawa, but that's right. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. That one come down now. So shifting gears away from Ontario, we understand that there's a lot of concern coming at the federal government from the United States as well. And again, the Deputy Prime Minister yesterday spoke about the many conversations she was having with stakeholders in the U.S. officials, Brian Deese in particular. And we understand that on February 11th, you ended up having a phone call with President Biden. Mr. Clerk, we'll just pull up the readout of that call. It's PB.can 6057. Okay, just scroll down to the next page, please. So, maybe that's there. It's got to be somewhere. Keep scrolling until you see a readout. But in the oh no, there it is. I think. In any event, Prime Minister, can you tell us? Just the readout doesn't actually say that much. So, can you tell us about your recollection of that call?
There were sort of two goals I had in that call. The first one was to reassure him that despite the disruptions to trade and real impacts on both sides of the border, which were economic, yes, but were also people to people. We knew from the pandemic that thousands of healthcare workers cross the Ambassador Bridge every day from Canada to go work in Detroit in their hospitals. There are real meaningful connections across that crossing that were being disrupted in meaningful ways, and I wanted to reassure President Biden that Canada was going to be able to solve for this, and that we were going to continue to be a reliable partner for trade and for people-to-people ties and a safe neighbor. That was sort of in response to his concerns around disruptions to activities on both sides of the border because of the blockage. But the second thing I wanted to talk about was just sort of the general context, the fact that the 911 center being overwhelmed in Ottawa a couple of days before happened from American calls, that there was a significant amount of amplification from certain sectors of the American politicosphere. And there was also a significant amount of money flowing and support for these occupation activities in Canada that were coming from people in the United States sympathetic to that cause and opposed to both he and I in our public health policies, but also in our general policies.
Okay. And would you say that President Biden shared your level of concern about the situation?
No. I think I was much more concerned about the blockage to the lives and the disruption and the potential security concerns. I think he was very concerned, but I don't think anyone was more concerned than me.
Okay, fair enough. It was happening on your side of the border, so that makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. That's it for that one. So this sort of brings us to a pretty critical time in the narrative of what happened in February. So we're building to a bit of a crescendo around that time, the 10th, the 11th, and we've heard from the clerk of the Privy Council that on February 9th, she advised you to convene the incident response group. And the first meeting of the incident response group was then on February 10th. So we have heard quite a bit about the different cabinet committees and what the IRG is, but I'm wondering if you can tell us from your perspective, sitting as Prime Minister and chair of these committees, what it means to convene an IRG and how it differs and what it gives you, what advantage it has versus other structures.
Regular cabinet committees are chaired by members of cabinet and feature various cabinet members sitting around the table, assisted by their directors, their deputy ministers. But they are discussions amongst cabinet ministers on a particular issue that will then go to full cabinet. That's what most committees are. The IRG is a special committee, special in that it is chaired by me. It doesn't have a permanent membership because we deal with incidents that require or are important for the federal government to respond to. These could be floods or hurricanes. The most recent IRGs I've had have been on the situation in Haiti and how Canada can respond and support. We had them around. Have them around all sorts of different things, depending on what they are needed for. We pick the areas of expertise we want around the table. But differently from most committees, these are meetings in which the officials sit around the table and are not just expected to participate, they actually lead the discussions. Whether it's deputy ministers or heads of agencies, the commissioner of the RCMP, the director of CSIS, what have you, they are giving direct reports. Ministers are usually, if not always, there as well. But if they speak at all, it's at the very end to add a little bit of color or further input. IRGs are all about making sure that the government as a whole is hearing directly, that I am hearing directly from all these different agencies and all these different inputs into whatever incident we're looking at. And then we establish a plan or we move forward on that. It's actually a decision-making body. We can make determinations about what we do next, but that frame is fairly unique amongst our committee structure.
So it collapses that layer between the officials and the ministers a bit, so gives
we hear
access?
Directly from the ministers, which is sometimes something that cabinet ministers who are used to getting briefed by their officials and then briefing their colleagues takes a little bit of getting used to. When we have a different IRG on a different subject with new ministers who aren't usually at IRGs, it always is a little adjustment for them that, no, we're hearing from their deputy minister, not from them. It's about informing us, but it's also about making sure that everyone is on the same page. One of the challenges in any government is the siloing that happens. Something that happens in public safety doesn't necessarily get connected to transport, doesn't necessarily get connected as organically as we'd like to immigration and various things like that. So making sure that everyone's around the table, getting on the same page in terms of what's happening with this incident that we're looking at and what we're going to do about it. And there's usually here are the taskings we're going to do. And let's check back in a few days and see how we've done and see where we are again. IRGs rarely happen on a sort of a one-off. There's usually a series of them until the incident is over or has been moved to a different body to weigh in on.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful in understanding. So we know that the IRG that you convened to deal with this particular problem met first of all, 3 times before invocation, and then I think I met daily after that, but we're going to focus on that first part on the 10th, the 12th, and the 13th. And I'll just fill in a little bit of the narrative so you don't have to here, but we understand that on the 10th, what was discussed was 2 tracks for a potential federal response. So at this point, I won't say it had been decided, but it was certainly under serious consideration that the federal government might have to act in some way, shape, or form here. And track 1 was what can the federal government do under its existing authorities? Track 2 was what could we potentially do under any new authorities, including the Emergencies Act. And I just want to pause here and ask you one thing, which is in the documents, that's sort of maybe not the first, but it's certainly the first sort of confirmation, official confirmation that the Emergencies Act was under discussion. But we have seen references to the Emergencies Act here and there in various phone calls or emails or discussions, et cetera. And I'm wondering if you can describe, if someone asked you, when did the Emergencies Act come into play as a possibility? How would you answer that?
Oh, as an idea, it would have been from the very beginning in the back of our minds. As you see a situation that is an emergency, is out of control, has a potential for real impact on citizens, potential for violence, real concerns about what's going on, not just in Ottawa, but right across the country. At the Coutts blockade that started up on the same first weekend that the Ottawa occupation did. These are the things that you say, okay, as we look at a whole range of potential outcomes in this, there might be a moment where we have to invoke the Emergencies Act. It wasn't seriously thought of because I will say certainly in my thinking right now, it was a fairly binary reflection. It was, oh, we might have to invoke the Emergencies Act. There was no reflection of what we would have to invoke the Emergencies Act to do. It was just understanding that if this situation continues and is unable to get under control by anything else, the federal government might have to give the provinces more powers, give police more powers, do something to put an end to this. So whenever we said, yeah, we're looking at all options, it would have been in the back of our minds, particularly because I think we're probably the first government that had ever actually leaned in carefully to maybe using the Emergencies Act as we did in the beginning of the pandemic. We dusted it off and had presentations at Cabinet around what the Emergencies Act was and how it was an update from the previous legislation that had existed before and how it was charter compliant. And because post 1982, a lot of things needed to change for the better in our country with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So we got a crash course in the Emergencies Act and the consultations required and all the various steps of it. 2 years before, around the pandemic. As I had said during the consultations at that time with the premiers, I didn't think we needed to use it. I didn't think it was appropriate for us to declare a public welfare emergency. I believe the section is within the Emergencies Act that we would have invoked around the pandemic. But there were a lot of people calling for us to do it because it was obviously a national emergency, this pandemic, particularly in the early days of spring 2020. So we were somewhat versed in this legislation that had never been used. Seeing this particular public order situation, it was a reflection in the back of our minds, or my mind anyway, I can't speak for everyone, that maybe it would end up at this. But for the same reason we were loath to call an IRG too soon in the process, we knew that it wasn't ours to solve at this point, that there were still lots of things that the police of jurisdiction and various orders could and should be, orders of government could and should be doing to put an end to this. So it wasn't until, as you say, the IRG of February 10th, Thursday, that we said, okay, track 1, what more can we do to empower police and public safety officials to put an end to these illegal occupations? What more resources can we spend with existing authorities? And track 2 was,
He's back. They
what
didn't
could we
have what
do
they
that
wanted.
we would have to create new authorities for, whether it was through regulation, whether it was through passing emergency measures through the House, or whether it was using something like the Emergency Measures Act. And the key for me in that conversation was it was a shift from that sort of binary frame of
Oh, it's good. It's breakfast.
no Emergencies Act or Emergencies Act. Because if you think about it, the Emergencies Act itself doesn't do anything except declare an emergency. It's that it enables government to bring in special temporary measures to deal with the situation. So the useful conversations around the Emergencies Act started on February 10th when I asked the question, okay, what are the extra tools that we would need to bring in, either through legislation or through regulation or in various ways, or through the Emergencies Act, that we don't actually have now? Or what would we do with the Emergencies Act if we brought it in that we can't otherwise do? And that reflection on, well, what would be the tools, actually clarified and got the work going. Perfect example was we'd heard consistently throughout that commercial tow truck drivers were not willing to come in and remove trucks.
I heard that.
Well, the Emergencies Act perhaps could compel tow truck drivers to come and actually fulfill their contracts that are signed with cities to keep the streets clear of
That's
illegally.
amazing.
So
We could have
that
made them do it.
reflection was really the one that started then. And the tasking that I gave on that Thursday, that we would check in again on the Saturday at the next IRG, was, okay, come up with those tools that we could get at that would solve this. And then we'll look at, well, do we need the Emergencies Act to bring in these tools, or can we do it through another way, or can we convince a province to do it, or are there other ways of doing it? But let's figure out what are the things that would allow us to get this situation, which was out of control, back under control.
Okay, so that was essentially the discussion around the table on the 12th, I believe, and then the 13th was the big day in terms of deciding as a government whether you were going to take that first step and seriously consider invoking the Emergencies Act. Can you take us through, from your point of view, the chronology essentially of the 13th? We know there was an IRG meeting in the afternoon, I think it was 4:30, and the decision coming out of the IRG was to have a cabinet meeting in the evening and to discuss the potential invocation of the act. So how did those meetings play out?
Pendant le groupe de réponse d'incident,
During the IRG on that Sunday, we
Yeah,
took
it's
a
the
very
French.
close look at the measures that were proposed, the list of tools that we could give ourselves
Why?
Guys, I can't find
to
was
help
saying
the
this
police,
for
the
like an
provinces.
hour.
I lost the stupid OBS on here, so I can't see a thing. So I'm gonna have to restart the whole stupid thing. This is unbelievable, guys. I don't know where it went. Like,
Y'all went away.
yeah, I don't know. Like how to. One sec here. I wonder if it'll launch anyway.
You might be back.
No, I don't know.
No.
We'll find out in a second here. This is unbelievable. I was well, I have one launched anyway, but now I can't see a thing because I'm already open in something else.
Right.
So that's no good.
No.
Anyways, guys, I'm gonna have to close the whole stupid stream.